In the times of brain rot, it feels really weird to actually read something that draws its charm from subtlety. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb initiative. I'm your host, the Weeb. This is a show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week, for a change, I'll be talking about a manga, and this is one of my favorites, Bartender. So before I start, some disclaimers. Spoiler alert, I'll be talking about everything that happens in this manga, though I will not be entering too much in the details due to the more episodic nature of the work, and also because it would take me so very long to explain everything that happens in this due to the fact that it has 163, 67, something in that ballpark of chapters, and all of them are in one way or another somewhat story defining. So in that sense, I will not be talking too much in detail about it. And also, this is not so much a disclaimer, but this is something that I chose to do. I have watched the two animes that Bartender has, the first one that came out in 2006 and the second one that came out in 2024. Also, and this is more or less of a disclaimer that I want to put in the beginning of this episode rather than later, I really did try to put the original cover of the first volume of the manga in the thumbnail, though I could not find a high-res version of the image, so I had to do the conscious decision to use the 2024 rendition of the thumbnail, somewhat cut up, mostly because I would not sit well if I use the 2006 rendition of the anime. I'll enter more in the anime camp a bit later, but it's to say that the 2006 version is a bit rough. So with that said, let's get to the story. Basically, first before the story really, let's get to the stats. So Bartender originally is a manga written by Araki Joe, notably, and this is something that I will be talking about here, Araki Joe is not the same Araki who writes JoJo, so two different people, and he is most famous by doing a whole lot of mangas in and around food and beverage as a means to tell a story. Bartender specifically is a really mature and really let's say character driven, I would call it drama. I don't think romance is a really nice classification for it, but it is really feet on the ground, really realistic slice of life kind of stuff, and as such it does not have any action. I think if the whole manga has one or two slaps in its whole run, it's the most of it, I think it's 2 slaps if any, and in that sense it does really show a spotlight to both character building, character creation, and character writing, and the fact of the in this case, talking about Bartender, the beverages that they show. Other works that he has done, and this I will put this here also, illustrated by Nagatomo Kenji, who is one of the illustrators that did or still does. I think I don't have that many information on Araki Joe or Kenji Sensei for that matter, but his latest, I think, manga was aside from the I think a remake or spin-off of Bartender in 2024, he did Champagne in 2018, so I think it's still serializing. So for that matter, they are still working together. Kenji has done a whole lot of stuff with Araki Joe, and for that matter, I want to kind of bundle them together. Other works that he has done in the same vein as Bartender is Sommelier in 1996 and Sommelier in 2006 after a bit of time of Bartender, and Oui Chef and Garçon and so on and so forth. The guy only works really with stuff like linked to food and beverage from his resume, and in that sense he has a whole lot of knowledge. The amount of story and actual facts that appear in this manga is really interesting. It's a really nice, if you want to take it that way, it's a really educational kind of manga in that sense. It does teach a lot about bartending, about Japanese bar culture, and it's one, if not the most influential manga in let's say this side of my hobbies, because I also dabble in mixology from time to time, that did influence me to actually look for bars in Japan to actually visit when I go there. And in that sense, it does really bring a special light into it. But that's about the main manga, let's say, because there are some spin-offs. There is Bartender at Paris, which is from what I understand at the very least for this review, I have not read this, it's a kind of a prequel to the actual things that happen in Bartender. I will talk a bit more about this as I talk about the story, but the manga ran from May 2004 to December 2011 with 21 volumes, 167 I think chapters, something that ballpark. Then we have the original, I will say the original or the OG anime done by Palm Studio that ran from October 2006 to December 2006 with 11 episodes. This one I need to actually take my time to actually explain this at the very end, because oh boy howdy how rough this is. Then there is the television drama that ran from February 2011 to April 2011 with 8 episodes. Then Bartender at Paris came out, Bartender at Tokyo, that I think it's maybe the continuation for it, that came out in November 2013 to August 2016 with 8 volumes. And then after another, I don't know if this is a retrain, this is a spin-off, or maybe a, let's say, kind of reduced, let's say resized package, I would say, manga on Bartender 6STP. I'm sorry because I don't actually know what 6STP means, but it is apparently another spin-off, and this runs through a whole different story from the original series, so there's that. And then finally there is Bartender Glass of Gods, or Bartender Camino Graça, that came out on April 2024 and ended on June 2024 with 12 episodes, done by Liber Studio. And those are basically the stats, so you can see that these manga, even though it's pretty, I would say it's pretty niche, it does have somewhat of a cult following and has become in some circles a bit of a classic. So if you do want to go into anime and manga that cover food and beverage, I think this is one of the most after, let's say, after the famous ones, I think this is one of the most like must-sees of the list. And also, in a different note, I think that it is so much more than just food and beverage related kind of series. It is in many ways transcript of life, and this is already talking about story. So the main story is about Bartender. I think at the beginning of the manga he mentions that he's somewhere in the early 30s, something like that, Sasakura Ryu, and he has come back from his stint in France for the past 8 years back to Japan, and he's a working bartender, and he wants to come back and basically learn the new scene and the current trends in Japan. But also this is something that is set up really early in the manga. He leaves, and this is something that as the story goes it does become a bit more clear of why and how we ended up here. But he seeks to serve the Glass of Gods, or the Camino Graça, as the anime names, that is the one drink that may save the soul of a customer. And I think this at the start, and this is something that I want to talk about really quickly. I don't have, and I don't feel like in any way I can actually do justice on how much this anime is complex, because this anime is at the same time really simple in its structure, but the way that they present each of the stories is really, really, really deep. And for this is something that I really want to mention here, and for those who have not read, I will recommend that right from the start. Please read it. Kenji Nagamoto, he has a really, I would say, simple art style for the most part, but it is at the same time really simple, and at the same time one of the most emotionally charged art styles that can be. He does have that sense of actually making the characters do the precise faces that they need at each time to express each of the emotions really clearly to the reader, and this is something that comes up more and more throughout the series, because one of the things that, and this is the definition of the Class of Gods and the goal that Ryu has, is that each of the chapters, more or less, there will be one customer that comes into the bar, presents, or at the very least, the chapter will present a character with a regret, a problem, something in their life that is eating at them, is blocking their progress, is being basically torn on their side, something that is in many cases debilitating to the person. And in their limited time together, you as a bartender, and especially experienced one, even though he's young dude in terms of bartender standards, he has experience and he tries his best to help people find answers. And there are some specific cases that I want to touch on, and some specific cases that specifically each of the animes touch on, because they are basically the highlights. But I will say from the get-go that the structure of the manga is basically this. I just want to mention, before I enter each case, the recurring characters, because they are, want it or not, the ones that will bridge each of the parts of this manga together. And for that matter, I want to go through a bit of the early story. So Bartender, for me at the very least, I know that some people may say that my classification may be a bit wrong, but Bartender is divided on different arcs, and to me they are divided by which bar Ryu is currently working at. So at the very start, he starts working at Lapping. Lapping is a small bar in Ginza. Ginza is pretty famous neighborhood in Tokyo, and it's a rather small bar. He works there with one co-worker and the manager. The owner, it's said that the owner has passed away for I think 8 years at that point, 10 years, something like that. And in Lapping, we will meet a whole lot of the main cast that will be present for the rest of the series. So first off, the two, let's say, main characters that will drive the rest of the series, besides Ryu, is Kuroshima Miwa, who is this office worker that works at an office worker as a general sense of the word, but she's working at a hotel chain called, I don't know if they actually give the name of the chain out of the start, but basically what it is meant to be is that it is a chain of hotels, not really the biggest in Tokyo, but one of the biggest ones, and they are working on trying to build a new hotel in Ginza called the Cardinal, and she's the main girl in the series, even though, as I will talk a bit later, there's no romance whatsoever in this whole series, which in a way is good, but I'll get there when we get there. And then the second one is Kuroshima Taizo. Kuroshima Taizo is Miwa's grandfather, and he's the CEO of the hotel chain. He does carry on. He's basically an old man who does carry on his, let's say, CEO part. He does show off the amount of money he has, though is not like bougie or anything, though there is this whole thing, and then mention this at the very start, that the Miwa doesn't actually mention that her grandfather is the CEO and so on and so forth, and they try to put any fear of nepotism and there's a table already really quickly. So basically they want to say that it is only merit and no nepotism involved whatsoever. Anyways, this is the very start of the series. Both of them are presented, I think it's in the first chapter, and from them on we will have a whole lot of colorful cast of characters going through the bar and actually interacting with Ryu. One thing that is important in the lapping arc is that Ryu at the very start, he is a bit more pretentious than later on. He shows off his inexperience at the start, and does I think in certain ways it does help the reader kind of reflect on him, because everybody starts somewhat when they start a new job. They want to say that they know what they're doing, even though they don't, and it's something that does happen a lot. But the important part is that at this first interaction, there's this whole thing about earning Taizo's trust, more or less, because, and this is one of the setups that they repeat in both the animes and is the catalyst to actually advance the plot, which is the fact that Ryu, not intentionally, but he shows off his talent for Taizo as he rediscovers, more or less, an old cocktail that he had back when Japan was opening up after the war. So it does invite a whole lot of historic research in that sense, and so on and so forth. And then the manga basically shows the whole process that he went through and explains the story, explains how he came to be, more or less. And in recreating that same flavor from at that point 50 years ago, imagine that this manga is set in 2004, 2003, so all the phones are flip phones and so on and so forth, so you can imagine what that's like. Anyways, and basically, right, the whole thing goes through, we go through the whole story, and Taizo recognizes the talent that Ryu has and how he could be someone to work for him at his new hotel, as his new hotel is mentioned, and this is a bit later, but it's his dream due to one conflict that will appear a bit later with Miwa, though I think, if I'm not mistaken, is still in the lapping arc. That is, and I don't want to make light of this, but basically, right, so Miwa's parents passed away in an accident 25 years ago, so Miwa is basically, I think, 28 at that point, 29, and she has been raised by his grandfather ever since. And in the day that, after a huge fight, his grandfather and her grandfather and her father had a fight, and they wanted to kind of make up. Her father chose a specific bottle of liquor to share, but Miwa, being a child, ended up kind of sleeping I don't actually remember what the manga show. One of the anime shows one thing, the other anime shows another thing. I don't actually remember the precise setup of the manga, but she ends up breaking the bottle, and they don't actually have that catharsis of actually sharing the liquor and stuff. And weeks later, Miwa's parents passed away, so they never actually had that catharsis moment, and they making up. And for that reason, one of the things that Miwa asks of Ryu to help her is to locate that specific bottle. It ends up being a really, I would say, characteristic bottle of Japanese whiskey, which is Suntory Kakuin, if I'm not mistaken, the name of the whiskey, which has its own mold of bottle, and it's really unique in that sense. And basically, right, so these two main setups is to earn the trust of Taizo and then Miwa, and then from then on, Miwa and Taizo will be present for the rest of the whole manga. Then we have, I think, still in lapping, and this is I'm trying to actually introduce the guys who actually appear a lot. We have the introduction of Kawakami Kyoko. Kawakami Kyoko is another bartender, though she's younger than Ryu and has not that much younger than Ryu, but she is less experienced than him. She's been bartending for only 3 years, and at this point, and this is something that will be a recurring theme with her, is her questioning her competence towards the work of bartending, due to the fact that she doesn't believe that she has all the skills that she needs to, and as such, this builds up over time to actually going through her whole arc of losing confidence, then kind of rebuilding it through being rage baited by Ryu. Ryu, at one point, he does say some really harsh things to her. In terms of, let's say Japanese etiquette, it was really, really harsh, downright gross, and that's in some senses. Though it is just rage bait, they end up being friends and stuff. And she ends up throughout her arc, kind of rebuilding her confidence and evolving on her own pace, on her own path. And this a bit more as the arcs go on. I will be talking more about this, but I think for the most part those are the main guys who are introduced. There are also some other supporting characters. Kuzuhara Ryuichi, who is a bartender of Bar K. Bar K is a hotel bar on, I think they call it the Diamond Hotel, which is a whole nother hotel and stuff. He's called Mr. Perfect throughout the whole series, and he's really harsh towards everyone when talking about bartending. He is really focused on the craft, and he takes really a really strong pride on his craft and the way that everyone should do it. So much so that there is this really early setup, and this is something that the anime, none of the animes actually go through, but it is really early setup that really shows like his character, more or less, that in the middle of a special event, public party or something like that, he just fires one of his apprentices due to the fact that he messes up with the stirring spoon, and the whole thing, it comes out really, really like really brutish. And this is like the impact. Kuzuhara-san, throughout the whole manga, he is really harsh and he is really perfectionist with his craft. He really takes pride on what he does and how much he puts the hard work to do it as perfect as possible. Though towards the very end of the manga, we will see that he has a caring side to him, and in that sense it becomes kind of not really cute, but becomes kind of admirable due to the fact that what he does is really down to the wire, I would say. Although that is some things that I'm talking about really, but not really getting anywhere. So basically those are the main characters that will appear more and more. There's also Yukari, I don't actually remember her last name. Basically, Miwa's co-worker that is sometimes used as comedy relief, and sometimes she has a crush on Ryu at some point in the manga. It's really quick, like two chapters worth, but anyways. And then we do have Miwa's boss, who is Kamishima Kosuke, who is your textbook example of manager in an anime. Though he does have his own struggles, he's kind of an asshole sometimes, but that's by the by. Still, one thing that, again, there's no action in this anime whatsoever, in this manga whatsoever, so there's no animosity towards anyone, and for that reason the whole thing kind of goes really smooth. Then from the lapping arc we go to the Bar Saito arc, and this is something that I didn't actually get, because the version of the manga that I read, and I think that it is fair to say this, at this point in time of recording, it is easier to find in the internet the original fan-made translation back from, like, I think the original translation came out in 2010, something like that, way before they actually translated it for English officially, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. So at some points the translator will have some notes on story and the story of drinks, some kind of facts that they get wrong or they are disputed, something like that. And basically, right, second arc is Bar Saito or Bar Higashiyama. Higashiyama is the name of the owner of this other bar. It's another bar on Ginza, though this one is a really more a high-end kind of bar. It's a more service-centered bar that has this more let's say more high-end style and in that sense high-end customers. This is one arc where you see, and there are some specific setups that happen here, but this is the arc where you kind of get, how can I say this, a bit more confrontational towards his vision of what a bartender is, and actually learns that bartending is more of a freeform thing. It's all in aiming for the class of gods to basically, right, what this sums up to is to serve the best service that you can to the customer. And I think the Barsaito arc is the part where he learns that this may be a more free-form kind of quest than he initially had thought out, so it kind of develops him in that way. Then, basically, right, so they go... Barsaito is really short in that sense. It's really short. Whole thing. It does present some other characters that will come up later towards the end of the anime, more or less, but anyways, it's an important arc due to the development that it causes in the Ryu. Then the third arc, and this is the beginning of the end, heralding of the end of the whole anime and the whole manga, and in some sense is the point of the story where all the enemies kind of take the ball and kind of start rolling with it. So after, and this is something that becomes clear as you read it, but basically every different part that Ryu works after lapping is basically Taizo kind of pulling strings to more or less test him. And when his stint at Barsaito ends, Ryu is sent to talk to a really eccentric guy, Maki-san. Maki-san is a rich guy, owner of multiple buildings in Ginza, and owner of this somewhat defunct bar called Eden Hall that he uses mostly for himself, even though it's a whole like bar with multiple rare liquors and stuff. And at the beginning he doesn't really want to open the bar for the public, but eventually you kind of requests it, and everything kind of goes from there. And this is the basically the arc of Eden Hall, the original. And in here we'll see the most of, I would say, Ryu as a character working out alone, because he does tend the bar alone, and for the whole arc it is just him against the clients and him trying to work out everything. Multiple setups happen here. It's the most I would say most of the readers remember this part because it is where most of everything happens, and multiple of even the guys who appeared back in Lapping, back in Saito, they kind of come back here as one visit, two visits, and some of the more memorable setups happen here in Eden Hall. So it does tend to be the one that people remember the most. What's important here is not only the development that Ryu has as a bar owner, more or less, but also is the one arc where he has to kind of face his past. Is something that for the most of the manga he dodges the question. He never actually answers anything about the past. It becomes clearer later on due to some things that happen, but then we get to know a bit of his history, the fact that he is the younger son of a famous politician, how he kind of went to be a bit involved in politics, but it is implicit that he ran away and became a bartender without his family's consent, mostly to spite his father in some senses. In terms of past, we go through, and we have a whole lot of flashbacks. We go through his training, we go to meet his master, his original teacher, Kase Goro, on Bar Kaze, the original bar he worked at, and also his senpai that from the middle, I would say the middle to the end of the arc will be helping hand on actually making Ryu take the next step on, who's Kitakata. He's really, and this is the thing, right? So everybody in this whole manga is eccentric. That's the thing, that everyone's so like caricatures of themselves that you kind of remember every single one of the characters, due to the fact that it's not that the setups are absurd, but everyone is so out there with their own thing. They really dress their ideals really far, and so you kind of remember everyone in a sense. Kitakata is I think the one thing that he says is that his bar is not a hospital, is not somewhere where he can tend to people's souls, much like Ryu. It is a field hospital where he tends to people on the front lines with, and this is just his way of saying that he does things not all bartenders would do, and some that may be considered kind of wrong, though it is for good reason. And he does give the one setup that he has when we first meet Kitakata and have this kind of weird realization about him is really strong, and I kind of want to touch on it, but at the same time it's kind of maybe a bit too heavy for what I wanted to do in this review, so I don't know. But easy to say, the whole thing is about Ryu's past in this arc, and by the end of the arc, we get to see actually Taizo wanting to open finally the Hotel Cardinal, and he wants to recruit 2 people. One of the ones he recruits is Kyoko. Kyoko has been working at Bar Minami, which is another bar. I think at some point it is the bar upstairs of Eden Hall. But anyways, and Minami-san, who's the owner of Bar Minami, is a really nice guy overall. He does help Kyoko a lot, and throughout the whole arc, Kyoko will come to Ryu as looking for advice and so on and so forth. What is important is that Kyoko ends up being recruited. I'll talk about her specific case that appears in the second anime, which is I think really cute in a weird way. It's really, really emotionally well done, and Taizo also wants to recruit Ryu to serve as the not secondary bartender, but he wants to open 2 bars inside of the hotel. One of a kind of a normal hotel bar with tables and stuff, and the second one a casual bar, a counter bar, much like what he already has in the hall, but he wants to open it inside of Hotel Cardinal. One of the things that happen, and I will forget, is that they do introduce a bit more characters that work at the hotel that I don't actually remember. There's a whole thing about the manager of Hotel Cardinal being recruited from Hotel Diamond, and so everybody thinks that it is actually a plant because he wants to kind of still trade secrets and stuff, but this kind of gets messed up and they just like brush it off. It's something that like keeps up for 2-3 chapters, but at the same time it doesn't really go anywhere. But anyways, the whole arc ends up with Ryu and Taizo kind of building this father-son relationship somewhat, because as it turns out, Ryu, being the son of a politician, didn't actually have so much of a father figure in his life present to play ball and stuff, and Taizo, as the owner of a hotel chain since forever, he didn't have actual time to play with his son back when he was a kid, and now that he passed away, things kind of get like that. They do have, it's a really nice bonding experience. What I can say, they do represent this in the anime a bit, but then basically, right, so they only finish Hotel Cardinal truly when finally Eden Hall opens up, and this is something that Ryu takes, let's say, borrowed from Max-san. He takes the name Eden Hall and plants it into Hotel Cardinal, and then we have Arc 4, a Cardinal Arc. Cardinal Arc is an evolution from the bar owner that Ryu was in Eden Hall 1, which is the fact that not only Ryu now is somewhat the owner of the bar, he needs to keep earning money from the hotel from his side, but also he has a different clientele this time there's a whole setup. I will forget the names of most of the everything that happens in the Cardinal, really, but there's one setup with I'm sorry if I messed this up. I think she was either Venezuelan or Colombian. The Maria Mendonça, I think it was the name. I don't actually remember. Actual singer. They put her in the manga for some reason, and there's this whole setup with her. It's really nice. There is a setup with a writer. There are a whole lot of setups inside of the Cardinal, and the whole thing kind of goes from there. So Ryu at the very start works as he was working on Eden Hall 1 until one day he's assigned apprentice, and this is where we are presented our last main character, Tsubasa Wakui, and this is the part, and this in the whole Cardinal arc is the beginning of the end of the series, I would say, because this is where we'll finally see what I would say the passing of the torch. It is the arc where the author basically says that everything that the old generation has cultivated, it is to be passed on. So basically we have Ryu actually meeting back with his master and actually having one last day of them bartending together, more or less. It is the unofficial reopening of Bar Kaze, and in that sense, it does, it has a whole lot of emotional charge in there. The fact that the whole setup, and I don't know, and sorry for everyone who had this kind of experience in their life, I didn't actually. In that sense, I'm pretty new to this, but it is from the get-go that they know that Kaze-san will not, he's currently hospitalized for the past like 7 years at this point in the story, and they discharge him from the hospital, and they say from the get-go it is the last time that they can discharge him. So basically saying that he is at the point of no return at this point, and as his last act he wants to bartend. And so there's this whole emotional setup about the fact that Kitakata and Ryu help him to realize his dream to actually be a bartender for one last time. It is really hard. It's heartbreaking in that sense. Oh my god. And then the next is Taizo being in somewhat of the same place as Kase. He does go for the last time to Eden Hall inside of his hotel Cardinal, the one that he built himself. He goes there, has a cocktail, smokes a cigarette, and in a frame that will be burned throughout my whole life in my brain, he dies 10 days later. It is really, and the way that they present this really is shocking, because they just give the written note. They don't actually go through the whole thing about this scene of everybody crying and stuff. But anyways, then with Taizo out of the picture as the owner, the other part that has part of the ownership of the group takes over. And long story short, they close Eden Hall inside of Cardinal because at that point it is a loss-making venture. It was basically something that the owner opened up out of his own desire with no actual gain involved. And so as we can attest, looking at the implementation of AI in businesses and stuff nowadays, everything is veered towards profits and stock market and stuff. So they end up closing Eden Hall. At this point, Tsubasa kind of nudges Ryu to actually seek out and open a new bar, and the two of them together, they go on to build their own bar, go through a whole lot of setup and stuff, looking for special items to be the treasures of the bar, and the whole thing about meeting different people, from the liquor store owner to the ice maker. They go through their whole journey to end up in the last, and this is really small arc, Eden Hall RNT for Ryu and Tsubasa. And for me to say that this manga from this point on could go on forever, I think that it could. Realistically, obviously not, but in a sense it could go on forever, because as it goes episodically, going through many pains and regrets that every adult has lived through. It could go on because everybody has a story. Everyone lives different stuff, but we live in a world where we have at this point 8 billion people. Surely more than one person already went through this. And save from the platitudes that I'm about to say, this manga is beautiful. It's beautiful. It goes through so much stuff, and this is me spitballing a few of the cases that they go through in the many chapters and arcs that they go on through. We have one that and I don't remember any of the name. I remember Hayase-san's case because Hayase is one that they touch on, I think, in both of the animes, but I especially remember this because it's one of the most memorable ones for me at the release, because it's really fucking cute, and also because I think that the way that they represented this in the new anime was the best way that I could have wished for, considering the amount of time they actually had in the anime to do it. So I give them the kudos for that. But anyways, so there is one specific one that does appear in the original anime that is about overworking husband and dissatisfied wife, and the drink bijou or jewelry in French, that has the whole, and I'm just spitballing, that basically the whole, let's say, trigger of the whole thing is that the fact that Ryu notices that even though the wife is married and stuff, she does not wear her ring, and the husband, due to the fact that he overworks himself, does not notice this whatsoever. And then when they actually meet in the first time for like 3 months, she wants a divorce, and then the whole thing goes from there. It's one of the most memorable ones, and I will say this before I start to talk nonsense. Every one of these cases kind of ends up well in any way, but in many senses I don't want to actually go into much detail due to the fact that this is not the point. Going into the detail at this point would be really pointless, because come on, like, go read the fucking manga. That's the thing. Go read the fucking manga. Anyways, the next case, and this is the one that kind of bit of starts the manga in some sense and actually ends the manga, is about a politician that appears for you as his first drink is a rusty nail, and we have this whole story about Old Par is a whiskey that has this special bottle that doesn't actually fall, so that he would stay on politics even though he's about to be prosecuted for corruption. And then later the departure drink to him to go out and actually retire and do whatever he wants after retiring. Then there's this whole thing about pastis and absinthe with Hon, marriage fraudster and a doctor. And then the one that I mentioned before, Hayase-san, I think this one is the most memorable for me. That is a top level executive that really does try to be a good person to everyone. He tries to agree with everyone and kind of do good to everyone, but he ends up getting the short end of the stick, as many people do. He quit smoking, and in the same day that he does go to the bar and having quit smoking like the last week, there's a girl at Ryu's bar is smoking a cigar, not really smoking, she's just watching it burn, and they enter into kind of a squabble. He breaks the cigar and then leaves out of pure anger. Later on, he sees how childish he was, how selfish he was in that sense, and then he ends up finding the girl, gives her a whole box of cigars due to that fact, and that in itself, it has a whole lot of context of why she was not really smoking the cigar itself. I don't want to mention this here, but it is really heavy stuff. I cry every fucking time I watch or read that thing. And they kind of make up. They plan to share the box of cigars together, and they go to at the hall I think it's at the hall or either hall or lapping. I don't actually remember. Multiple times to go together and smoke and drink and stuff. They end up kind of creating this nice relationship, though, as he was to be transferred to a more regional hospital in the countryside because she's a doctor. They plan to meet up one last time, but due to work things, Hayase doesn't actually get there in time. With only one cigar left in the box, he smokes it alone and reflects on his ways. And I think and this is the whole setup, right? After and this is why I think it's lapping. I think 1 year later in the time of the manga, they end up meeting again in this another location where he works, and they kind of have this whole conversation and stuff, and end up marrying and having a kid. I know that the moment that the scene of the manga where they enter the bar with the I don't know the name of that thing, the kangaroo kind of vest to have the child. Oh my god, I was so happy. It is so fucking cute. And in that sense, and I know there's a dissonance between me talking about this and I think the title that I'm going to use, The Art of Subtlety. But here's the thing, right? As I said at the start, I cannot give enough credit, and I cannot present this in the way that I am. I cannot present this. I cannot present how much this manga is good in these subtle little things that it does to show off the stories and actually be this all-encompassing great thing. Because I cannot do it. I cannot explain subtlety to you anyways. The only thing that I could think to do to actually explain this whole thought process, the genius of the writing, would be to read frame by frame together, and this is undoable. But what I want to pass on to you listening is that this manga is really nice. It is a really calm thing to read. It is really soothing, really nice. It does have its place. It is, in some sense, it carries the same energy that less action-filled episodes of Frieren has, I would say. Where the good part is not really the episode itself, it's the reflection that it causes you to have, and the way that it shows that we as people can work our things together, or even we can solve our own problems, be it a lack of confidence, be it a squabble with a parent, or a squabble with a brother or sister, be it sorrow, distrust, anything, we can work it out. And in that sense, I think this manga is really nice. And with that said, this is about the manga, so I need to touch on both of the animes, because otherwise I will not sit right not talking about it. Because the first thing that I will need to say is, do not watch 2006 anime for oh my god. So I don't know if this is the why, or if the reasons behind why it is this way, but fun fact about Studio Palm, or Palm Studio, I don't actually remember, the studio that did the first Bartender anime back in 2006. So funny, not so funny story really, but the long and short of it, the anime came out in 2006. They were defunct in 2007, and that, I don't know if that's the reason why, or if the reasons behind the fact that they ended up that way. But the first thing is, they do a whole rewrite of the whole thing in the anime. This is something that both of the animes do, and I kind of understand why. But they scrape the first two arcs all together, so there is no lapping and no Saito. They just have Eden Hall 1. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is just talking about the 2006. I don't know what the fuck they were smoking. I don't really can imagine what the thought process was, but they do have a really weird way to present everything. So the episode starts with they rambling about something or another, about wondering. Then we have the opening. The song really slaps. That's a great thing. The two great things about the 2006 anime is the opening and the endings. I'll talk about the endings a bit later, but the opening absolutely slaps. It has nothing to do with anything, but basically, the anime will show different setups that happen. So different episodes that do happen there. In the manga, the anime will show, though some of the setups are kind of rewritten and some of them are kind of crushed together. So the same person will have two different drinks with the idea that the manga shows them off as, but it is one person only having two drinks with is not in the spirit of the manga itself, but that's not really the only problem actually. So there's that. There's the fact that Higashiyama-san and Kuzuhara-san will appear in this anime out of nowhere and explain stuff, and even some of the setups are not made by Ryu, but then, and this is something that the manga does have some of them. I do need to talk about the Kyoko thing a bit later, but that does not concern any of them. The thing is, right, so they appear out of nowhere. They do the setups that I'm using the word setups, but it is the morals, the story, the episode that Ryu kind of and the messages that Ryu imparts into his customers. Something that Ryu has said in the manga, they will say in the anime for some reason, and there's this whole thing about rewriting and stuff. But the one thing that really kind of grabs me by the balls and like doesn't let me go out and do anything else is the fact that for some reason they do this really weird thing with presentation, where it feels like, at the very least, let's say for the first 6 episodes, the whole thing is written as a play. It is, I'm not even kidding when I say that. There are parts where characters will start to monologue, they have limelights, the limelight will open up and then they will start talking, and then the limelight will go off and then it will shine someone else, and people not originally set in that one setup will talk for some reason. And then there's the fact that we have this all-encompassing narrator throughout the whole series, which then it's really strange, and I can't really explain this well because it doesn't really make sense at all. But just to say, they do have for the most part, right? For one episode, they have like 2 setups, so 2 different chapters in the manga are 1 episode in the anime, kinda. They do have, I'll not remember exactly, but they do have the Bijou setup with the husband and wife, which was well done, though, and this is already going into animation. Animation is rough, really rough, really stiff, and they use a whole lot of 3D, that old bad 3D from the 2000s for most of the drinks. So there's that. Then there's the fact that, oh my god, they do have some other setups which I don't actually like. They do have the marriage fraudster stuff. They have one that I personally don't like, even the manga version, which is the with the screenwriter and the director of a movie, which doesn't really sit well anyways with me, and some other stuff. But oh my god, man, the way that it is presented is really annoying. It's really jarring. And the thing is, right, why am I talking like this? I cannot wholeheartedly recommend this to anyone to watch, because to me it's really bad. What I can do, and I'll say this as a forward note more or less, and a blanket statement, I would not watch this for the story or anything. There is nothing to be taken out from here. The one thing that I can kind of recommend this, if you really want to, is to see how weird it is to watch and ask yourself what the fuck they were smoking on the meeting room, because man, it is one of the weirdest audio visual experiences I had in the past few years. And to me specifically, it's especially jarring, I think, because I read the fucking manga from front to back, and this is the second time I fully read this, and I have to say that given, I think has been like, I don't know, 6-7 years since I last read the manga, reading this again as more of an adult, having to pay my own bills and actually work for a living, it really does change your perspective on stuff. You really try to, I don't know, you really see yourself on some people, on some of the characters. It's really weird. Anyways, the fact of the matter, the 2006 anime, I cannot recommend it. If you want to for the trip, do that. But personally, I cannot. I truly cannot. Anyways, so that's about the 2006 anime. Now talking about the 2024. Oh my god, man, how much I liked the 2024. I wasn't really like expecting much. I was expecting something better than the 2006 because if they're going to actually do the remake for an anime that is from 2006 and the anime is that bad. Oh, quick tangent. I forgot to say this before, but quick tangent about the endings of the 2006 anime. So first the song bangs. Okay, the song is really nice. It is one of the only endings which I remember that has live action footage of anything, which is already something. But also, and this is something that I have to give kudos to the studio, I really think it's really nice. I don't know which bar they used, and I have not found in the credits which bar they used, but what they did is for the main cocktail of the episode, they will have live action footage of a real professional bartender actually doing it while the song plays. It is wild. I was like, holy shit, this is something that has not been done before. If only this anime had so many good ideas for the rest of it. Why does the ending is better than the rest of the anime? I don't know, but that is just to say that the ending is also pretty nice. Oh my god. Then, going back to the 2024. So, 2024, Bartender coming out glass, good as whatever you want to say, that they don't actually differentiate from L to R. So, anyways, it is a more story-driven kind of deal rather than the more episodic nature of the original manga, though it does tell a story very near the manga. And so basically it is the transition between Eden Hall 1 to Eden Hall Cardinal arc. So it is a bit of a transition, and this is a bit weird because at the point that the Cardinal opens up, Ryu has been involved in many things before the hotel has been finished, and as such it's kind of funky the way that they do the timing and stuff, but they do present it really well and really close to what the manga did. So in that sense I forgive them. For the most part, they don't actually go into the sappy notes. They do, let's say, they do not enter, for example, in the death of Taizo, for example, but they do present Kase-san's death and the whole thing about he being discharged from the hospital and stuff. And they do kind of do a bit of rewriting throughout the different setups that they present. They do present the Hayase-san one, but only like the first part. They don't actually show the revisit with the child and stuff. They do present Kitakata, and because obviously we have Kase-san, so we have to have Kitakata, but also we do have, and this is the part where I want to really give kudos to the studio. Studio Liber, I have talked much about them in the show, so I don't really need to enter their whole curriculum and stuff, but they're really great on what they do. And I'll say, I may be biased, but I think the art for this anime is really, really nice. I will say that I think the first two episodes have some funky frames, but I could be wrong about that. Anyways, so thing is, right, so what they do for the most part, the one thing that I really, really like, and this is already through the end of the anime more or less, is the part where they recruit Kyoko to work at Cardinal. The way that she graduates from Bar Minami is Minami-san actually going to the bar as a customer to Kyoko to serve him, and I will not, this is not even close to the emotional impact that he has, by the way that he does it and the whole thing, how they present it and stuff. It is it's not one-to-one to the manga, because in the manga they have the manager too, but the the way that they did in the anime is like the closest thing that they could have done. It's really perfect in that sense. However, and this is a thing, as one of the things that I don't know why they added this. I don't know why they did this. And frankly, I have no idea where this came from. But the one big change that they had from here, and not talking about the rewrites, I'm talking about a whole new character altogether, is the fact that for one reason or another, better yet, while Ryu is working at Edenhall 1, Kuzuhara-san actually has an apprentice called, I think it's Kevin Chen. He's half Singaporean, half Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. The way I question the validity of that due to the fact that he's blonde in an anime, which... Anyways, that's not the point. The thing is, right, so he's a totally new character to the series. I don't know where they did this from, because in the manga, Kuzuhara-san does have an apprentice when Tsubasa appears. I think, if I'm not mistaken, his name is, in the manga, is Shiraishi. He has a whole different setup, whole different case to Chen. Something about redeeming his father and stuff. It's a really heartwarming kind of setup they do in the manga. Here in the anime, I don't really understand why they did this and what was the point. I do know that due to the fact that there is this new guy here, they do change a few things. So there is this one case where in the manga where Ryu is on vacation and he goes to the Suntory distillery in, I think it's Yoi. I don't actually remember the name of from the top of my head, I don't actually remember the name of the prefecture right now, but it's the first distillery that actually did whiskey in Japan, and he does go there, and there's this whole kind of a history lesson about whiskey in Japan, which I find really interesting. But then they do change it up in the anime, because, and this is already going into a tangent, the anime does introduce not only everybody that I already mentioned, but also it does introduce as someone that appears in the manga. I'm not saying new characters, but it does introduce someone that I have not mentioned yet, is Uehara-san and Yuri-san. Both Uehara-san is the owner of the bar Hell's Arms, and Yuri is basically the apprentice there. Same kind of level as Kyoko, but in this anime, the whole thing kind of does go into a different direction, more or less. What I will say is that Yuri and Uehara both use a whole lot of Okinawan dialect, which I find kind of endearing, mainly because of Blood Plus and Kuronaisa. But anyways, that's not the point. The thing is, right, so they do change the whole thing about this distillery, and also, and this is, I cannot prove this, and the anime does not have that classic Konobangumi wa Gran no sponsor no Tekyo de Okurishimasu, the sponsor shout out they have at the start. I didn't see anything from Santori or Birdie, but I know that Birdie, as in the brand, I think it's a bar accessory brand, they do have their names mentioned in the credits. Suntory, not really. I don't know if it was me not really paying attention to katakana, or if the logo was there and I didn't actually see it, but I didn't see any Suntory stuff there, but I did see Birdie. The thing is, right, so there is this one chapter, two chapters, I don't actually remember, in the manga, and this is the thing, right, so there are two competitions in the manga. There is, the first one is the bartender competition, as in overall bartending, and the second one is original cocktail competition. The overall bartending competition that they have on the manga, the first winner is Yuri, and the second one is Kyoko, and this is a whole, I remember this because it has this really weird logic to actually put a piece of ice inside of a martini, which just saying feels wrong, but anyway, they do add up some logic there to actually do it. It's wrong, but anyways, that's why she got second place anyways. And that's how in the manga Taizo ends up recruiting Kyoko to work at Carno. And the second one is also a Kyoko-centered chapter, though it's really, really bad vibes. I cried a lot about her mother passing, and oh my, it's bad. I mean, it's somewhat cute, but it's really hard to read. And it is about original cocktail. And the thing is that they changed this so that this new character, Kevin Chen, can go into it and show off to his father, because the whole sitch is that his father does not approve of him being a bartender long term, and he just sent him to Japan to be a bartender, to train into service industry, to then work at a hotel, because he's like the heir to the hotel group in Singapore and stuff. But then he goes against his father. He wants to be a bartender full time, and so on and so forth. And then and this is why I mentioned Suntory at the beginning. They do show the setup for the Suntory Annual Cocktail Awards, which is a competition for bartenders for original cocktails. And so they mixed up a whole lot of arcs all together. And the thing is, right, Yuri still ends up winning. Kyoko still ends up going to Cardinal, but then this guy just vanishes from the story, and they say, oh, it's alright, he's working as a bartender now in Singapore. And the whole thing kind of doesn't work right, doesn't feel right. I don't know. And I don't know why they had to introduce a new character and stuff. The one thing that I will say is that due to watching this anime, now I know that the Suntory Cocktail Awards is a thing, competition is a thing, and now I need to actually try to look for the VODs of the live streams, because apparently they live stream these every year, which then leaves me to wonder what the fuck have I been looking at for the past 5 years, because this is something really interesting. I really want to see it. But back to the thing. So I have not seen Suntory written anywhere in the actual anime, though I think that they do have the sponsor. And I will say this more because I feel like it, because from what I know, and I could be wrong about this, from what I know, Suntory also takes care of importing a whole lot of different worldwide liquor to Japan. And given the fact that we have a whole lot of different liquors appearing, like whole bottles with whole names and stuff, no things like McDonald's, no things like money, something. There's nothing of that here. There's nothing. Noli Pret is called Noli Pret. Martini is called Martini. Smirnoff is called Smirnoff, and so on and so forth. It is really, really weird to, I don't know. I feel like it's weird because I'm so accustomed to the other things. And in that sense, I just feel like this whole anime was just done because someone got the sponsor money. I don't. That's true. Allegedly, let's say, before anything, because the one thing I know is that Japanese lawyers, they will come back to bite me. But like high level stuff. I really, 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 really love this anime. It did all the right things that I wanted it to do on the right timing, the right ways. The introduction of the new character, I can brush it down the carpet, I don't care. The thing is, this anime is great to watch. I recommend this one. I do not recommend the original. Sorry, not sorry, I don't know. If you want to see something weird, then watch the original. Be my guest. But high level, read the manga, watch the 2024 anime. Both openings and endings also great. Animation could be debated for the second one. The first one, it is not great. It's not great. It's really stiff. Second one is debatable. Though the art and presentation, a 10 out of 10. The art and presentation I really do like. The character designs, I think, really sit well with me, the way that they interpreted everything. I personally don't see Miwa as a blonde, but that's just me saying. I think Kyoko was really well done. Yuri was really well done. We had this is a really little nitpick on my part. I don't like the most of the voice casting, not because I think that they did a bad job, but probably because they wouldn't have been the choices I would have made for those characters themselves. Minami-san and Taizo, I think, are the two that I can get behind. Ryu is kind of almost there. Kyoko, I think it's fine. Yuri, I think it's fine. Kind of fine, really. But Miwa, I think it's nice. Kitakawa, I don't really like. I don't understand. Kase-san, I don't know if they use two different ones or it's the same guy. But I don't have the names of anyone. I didn't actually go look for it. Sorry, but that's just my little nitpick. I didn't kind of really like the voice casting that much, but that's on me. Well, outside of that, animations okay. Presentation and art really nice. One thing that I want to mention before I actually finish is that the 2024 they actually did the, I don't actually remember if anyone actually did this. I remember talking about one of these cases, but I don't actually remember which anime was it. But imagine, right? So the original manga was written in 2004. So as I mentioned, all of the cell phones are flip phones and stuff. In the 2024 Kami no Grace anime, they actually modernized it. So the year of the current year is 2023, and everyone has smartphones and everyone posts on Twitter and stuff. But highline, right? What is the thing? The thing is the hairstyle of the characters, mainly the male ones, due to the fact that they use a whole lot of hair gel to pull everything back and stuff. It doesn't really work anymore. It kind of does. There are some bartenders that still use this style, and you can see throughout internet stuff, but not everybody. One that really caused attention, I think, is Hayase-san, because Hayase-san is not a bartender, he's an executive, and executives nowadays don't actually go out like that much. They don't pull the hair back. I mean, the hair gel is okay, but they don't pull the hair back so much. It's just a little side note on everything before I finish. So, and with that being said, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow, depending on the platform you're in. And I hope stick around for next time. Bye.